I still remember the exact moment my world shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't when I found the text messages. It wasn't even when I noticed the strange looks my sister-in-law Vanessa kept giving me at family dinners. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, at my gynecologist's office, when Dr. Miller looked at me with those sympathetic eyes that doctors reserve for delivering devastating news. "I'm sorry, Claire. The test results are conclusive. Your inability to conceive isn't temporary. It's a condition called premature ovarian failure." I remember staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots while my vision blurred. 3 years of trying, 3 years of temperature tracking, fertility treatments, disappointing pregnancy tests, and now this. "There are other options," Dr. Miller continued, her voice gentle. "Donor eggs, adoption," but all I could think about was how I would tell Mark, my husband of 7 years, the man who'd whispered about our future children since our 3rd date, the man who came from a family where bloodlines and legacy meant everything. I drove home in silence that day, rehearsing what I would say, how I would tell him that I couldn't give him the one thing he wanted most. I even stopped to buy his favorite whiskey, liquid courage for both of us. But when I walked through our front door, I heard voices coming from our bedroom. Mark was home early, which never happened. And he wasn't alone. "You're sure? Absolutely sure?" His voice sounded strange, tight with something I couldn't identify. "Yes, 10 weeks now." That was Vanessa's voice, my husband's brother's wife, the woman who had been like a sister to me for the past decade. I stood frozen in our hallway, clutching that bottle of whiskey like a lifeline. Something primal in me already knew, but my conscious mind was desperately trying to construct alternative explanations. "My brother can't ever know. No one can ever know." Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. "What are we going to do?" I heard Vanessa sniffle. "I'm keeping it, Mark. I've wanted a baby for so long, and Jason, he doesn't even touch me anymore. He'll believe it's his. He wants to believe it. And what am I supposed to do? Just pretend that's not my child? Watch my brother raise my baby?" Those words. My husband's words. They hit me like physical blows. I must have made a sound. A gasp. A whimper. Because suddenly they went silent. I didn't wait. I walked in. The bottle slipped from my hand, not breaking but rolling across our hardwood floor with a hollow sound that seemed to echo the emptiness forming inside me. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, but the damage was done. Vanessa's hand rested protectively on her stomach, the beginning of a bump I hadn't noticed before. Mark's face drained of all color. "Claire," he started. But I just held up my hand. The words wouldn't come. How could they? What words exist for this moment? "I was just told today that I can't have children," I finally said, my voice eerily calm. Funny timing, isn't it? Their faces. God, their faces. Horror, guilt, and underneath it all, relief. Relief that the secret was out, like they'd been waiting for this moment of discovery, waiting for me to free them from their deception. Vanessa started crying. Theatrical, heaving sobs that made me want to scream. "It just happened, Claire. We didn't mean for this." "It just happened?" I repeated. "What, you tripped and fell on my husband's dick? Multiple times, apparently?" Mark moved toward me. "Baby, please, let me explain." "Don't call me that," I whispered. "Don't you ever call me that again?" I remember how still the room became then. How the afternoon light filtered through our bedroom curtains. Curtains I'd picked out when we first moved in, dreaming of the family we'd build here. The family I couldn't give him. The family he'd created with someone else. "How long?" I asked. They exchanged glances, and that simple look between them hurt more than anything else. It spoke of intimacy, of shared secrets, of betrayal so deep I could drown in it. 8 months, Mark finally said. But it wasn't serious. I laughed then. A broken sound that scared even me. "Not serious? She's carrying your child. Our nephew or niece will actually be your son or daughter. That seems pretty fucking serious to me." Vanessa stepped forward, reaching for me. "Claire, we never meant to hurt you." And that's when something in me snapped. Not in the way people talk about. I didn't scream or throw things. Instead, I felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest, like ice forming over a lake in winter. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice steady. "Both of you, now." They left. Not without protests, not without tears. Theirs, not mine, but they left. And I sat down on my bedroom floor, our bedroom floor, and felt something shift inside me. The pain was there, massive and crushing. But beneath it, something else was forming. Something with teeth and claws. Something patient. Because in that moment, I knew with absolute clarity, they would pay for this. Both of them. I just needed to wait for the right moment. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. The kind where you have to smile at family dinners while watching your husband avoid eye contact with his brother. The kind where your mother-in-law can't stop gushing about finally becoming a grandmother, never knowing that her own son, my husband, was the father. I stayed. That surprises people when I tell this story. Why didn't I leave immediately? File for divorce? Make a scene? Because revenge served cold requires patience. And I wanted my revenge to be ice cold. So I played the part of the supportive sister-in-law. I listened to Vanessa's pregnancy complaints with a fixed smile. I nodded sympathetically when she talked about how Jason, my brother-in-law, her husband, the man she was betraying in the most fundamental way possible, was just so busy with work and not really connecting with the pregnancy journey. All while Mark watched from across the room, his eyes pleading with me to keep quiet, to protect his secret. 3 weeks after my discovery, Vanessa announced they were having a girl. I watched as my mother-in-law cried happy tears. I watched as Jason proudly put his hand on Vanessa's growing belly, claiming paternity of a child that wasn't his. I watched as Mark excused himself and disappeared into the bathroom for 20 minutes. Later that night, Mark tried to talk to me for the first time about it all. "I don't know what to do," he whispered in our dark bedroom, thinking I was asleep. "That's my daughter, Claire. My daughter." I said nothing, my back to him, eyes wide open. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life," he continued. "But how can I walk away from my own child?" It took everything in me not to turn and scream at him, to not remind him that we could have had children through other means, adoption, surrogacy, if biology was so important to him. Instead, he'd chosen to create a child with my sister-in-law, in the most tangled, destructive way possible. 2 days later, Vanessa called me, asked me to meet her for coffee. I agreed, curious what possible explanation she could offer. We sat in a quiet corner of a cafe I used to love. Now, like so many things, it was tainted. "I need you to understand something," she said, stirring her decaf latte nervously. "Mark and it wasn't love. It was comfort. Jason had been so distant, so cold. And Mark, he was hurting too." "Hurting?" I repeated. "Because of the fertility issues. He felt like a failure, like less of a man." I stared at her, speechless. She was trying to blame me for their affair. Because my body had failed us, Mark had sought comfort in her arms, in her bed. "So, this is my fault?" I finally managed. No, that's not what I meant." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "I just want you to know it wasn't some grand love affair. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake you're keeping," I said, nodding toward her belly. Her eyes filled with tears. "I can't not keep her, Claire. I've wanted a baby for so long. And Jason? Does he deserve this deception?" She looked down. "Jason and I haven't been intimate in almost a year. He knows this baby isn't his. He doesn't know it's Mark's." Another layer of betrayal. Another lie. But this information? This was useful. What broke me most in the following weeks wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the silence of those who should have spoken up. Mark's parents, who noticed the tension but chose to ignore it for the sake of family harmony. Our friends, who saw my pain but offered nothing but awkward platitudes. Mark himself, who began sleeping in the guest room but made no move to actually leave, to face what he'd done. I gave everything to this family. I hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas parties. I visited my father-in-law daily during his cancer treatment when no one else could face it. I was the one who organized our family reunion last summer, who remembered everyone's birthdays, who kept this fractured family together with sheer will and love, and they discarded me like I was nothing. The final straw came when Vanessa asked me, to host her baby shower, right in front of the whole family at Sunday dinner. "You're just so good at organizing these things, Claire," she said, her hand resting on her now prominent belly. "And your house is so much bigger than ours." Everyone nodded encouragingly. Even Mark, that coward, mumbled something about it being a nice gesture. A nice gesture. To host a party celebrating the child my husband conceived with another woman. The child I couldn't have. In my own home. I smiled. I nodded. I agreed. And that's when I knew exactly how I would make them pay. "I'll need about a month to plan," I said, reaching for my planner as if this were any normal family event. "Let's say April 12th? That gives me time to really make it special." Vanessa clapped her hands in delight. "You're the best, Claire. I knew I could count on you." Yes, they could all count on me. To be the reliable one. The supportive one. The one who would smile through pain and never make a scene. But not anymore. Because I gave everything to them. And they tossed me aside like I was nothing. It was time they learned just who they were dealing with. Planning Vanessa's baby shower became my obsession. Not because I wanted it to be perfect in the traditional sense, but because it needed to be perfect for what I had in mind. Every detail, every invitation, every decoration, all of it building to a moment that would change everything. But first, I needed information, evidence, power. Mark and I were living as strangers in our own home. He tiptoed around me, clearly afraid I'd finally snap and expose everything. He didn't know that I had much bigger plans than a simple emotional outburst. I started by gaining access to his phone, not by stealing it or hacking it. That was too obvious. Instead, I suggested we link our accounts to make family planning easier. He agreed eagerly, probably thinking this meant I was forgiving him, moving forward. In reality, it gave me access to his location history, his cloud storage, and his message backups. What I found was worse than I imagined. The affair hadn't started during our fertility struggles as Vanessa had implied. It had been going on for nearly 2 years, since before we even started trying for a baby. There were hotel receipts, intimate messages, even videos I couldn't bring myself to watch. But the most valuable thing I found was a series of emails between Mark and a lawyer. Emails discussing how to protect his assets in case of divorce. Emails dated just 3 weeks after we found out I couldn't conceive naturally. He'd been planning his exit strategy while holding my hand through doctor's appointments. I took screenshots of everything, printed key documents, stored it all in a secure cloud account only I could access. Next, I paid a visit to my own lawyer. Not the family lawyer Mark and I had used for years, but someone new, someone sharp, with a reputation for handling high-profile divorces with minimal mess and maximum advantage to her clients. "What do you want out of this, Claire?" she asked me during our first meeting. "Everything," I replied simply. "The house, half his business, and for them to never forget what they did." She nodded, no judgment in her eyes. "The financial aspects are straightforward given what you've shown me. The emotional satisfaction, that's trickier from a legal perspective." I smiled. "Leave that part to me." My next step involved Jason, my brother-in-law, Vanessa's husband, the unknowing victim in this twisted scenario. I invited him to lunch, something casual, just family checking in on family. "How are you holding up?" I asked him over sandwiches. "Excited about becoming a dad?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, it's what Vanessa wants. But what do you want, Jason?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the pain he'd been hiding. "I want my wife to look at me the way she used to, before everything." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I understand more than you know." I didn't tell him that day. I wasn't ready yet, but I planted seeds of doubt, carefully, subtly, asked questions about the baby's due date, mentioned genetic traits that ran in Mark's side of the family, traits that might eventually show up in his supposed daughter. Over the following weeks, I continued my preparations while playing the role of supportive sister-in-law. I ordered decorations for the baby shower, soft pinks and golds, Vanessa's preferred color scheme. I arranged for catering from her favorite restaurant. I even handwrote invitations to 30 female friends and family members. Everyone commented on how brave I was, how generous, how selfless. If only they knew. 2 weeks before the shower, I had a private meeting with Mark's business partner, Richard. I'd always had a good relationship with him. We'd had couples dinners together for years. Our spouses were friends. He was surprised by my invitation to meet without Mark, but agreed. "I need to know something," I said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. "And I need your complete honesty." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Of course, Claire. What's going on? Did you know about Mark and Vanessa?" His face fell. The answer was clear before he spoke. "I suspected. Mark was careless a few times, taking long lunches when she happened to be downtown, leaving events early when she did. I hoped I was wrong." I nodded slowly. "And you never thought to tell me? Or Jason?" He looked down at his coffee. "It wasn't my place. I thought it would burn out. These things usually do. Except now there's a baby involved," I said flatly. Richard's head snapped up. "The baby is... oh God. Yes, and I need your help." Richard, as it turned out, had his own reasons for resenting Mark. My husband had been leveraging their friendship to take credit for Richard's work for years. Small slights that had built into deep resentment. And Richard had documentation, emails, project files, meeting recordings, that would be very useful to me. A week before the shower, I visited Vanessa's mother, a lovely woman who had always treated me like a daughter. She was beside herself with excitement about becoming a grandmother. "I'm so happy you and Vanessa have stayed close through all this," she said as she showed me the tiny clothes she'd been buying. "Fertility issues can create such distance between sisters." I smiled and nodded, letting her believe the fiction that Vanessa had created, that my withdrawal over recent months was just pain over my infertility, not knowledge of her daughter's betrayal. Before I left, I casually mentioned, "Vanessa's so lucky to have a daughter. There's that genetic heart condition on Jason's side that affects male babies, isn't there?" Her brow furrowed. "What heart condition?" "There's nothing like that in their family." "Oh, I must be mistaken," I said quickly. I could have sworn Mark mentioned something about Jason's father having a heart issue that can be passed down through the male line. Another seed planted. 3 days before the shower, I had one last task. I visited Dr. Miller, my gynecologist, and asked for my complete medical records. She provided them without question. Then I asked something unusual. "The diagnosis you gave me, is there any chance it was a mistake?" She looked confused. "We ran the tests twice, Claire. I know it was difficult news. Could I have conceived before the condition developed? Say, 6 months ago?" Understanding dawned in her eyes. She thought I was bargaining, grasping for hope. "It's extremely unlikely, but not medically impossible. However, you would know if you'd been pregnant." "Of course," I said, tucking the medical records into my bag, just checking all possibilities. As I drove home, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in months. Everything was in place. The invitations sent, the decorations purchased, the catering confirmed, the evidence compiled. I had given them everything. My love, my trust, my loyalty. And they had discarded me, betrayed me, humiliated me. Now it was their turn to lose everything. The night before the shower, Mark tried once more to talk to me, to explain, to justify. "I know I can never make this right," he said, his voice breaking. "But I want you to know how sorry I am." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. This man I had loved, this man I had trusted with my heart, my future, my dreams. "I know you are," I said softly. "And tomorrow, everyone else will know too." He didn't understand my meaning. He thought I was threatening a scene at the baby shower, some emotional outburst that could be managed, contained, forgotten. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The morning of the baby shower dawned sunny and clear. Perfect weather for destroying lives. I got up early, setting up the decorations with meticulous care. Pink and gold balloons, a table for gifts, a beautiful cake with "Welcome Baby Girl" written in elegant script. Everything picture perfect. Mark watched me nervously from the periphery, clearly waiting for me to break down or lash out. I simply smiled and suggested he make himself scarce for the afternoon. "This is a ladies' event," I reminded him. "Why don't you go golfing with Jason? I'm sure he could use the distraction." The relief on Mark's face was almost comical. He thought he was getting a reprieve. By noon, the house was transformed. By 1, the catering was set up. And by 2, the guests started arriving. Friends, family, colleagues, women bearing gifts and excited smiles, ready to celebrate new life. Vanessa arrived last, escorted by her mother and mine. She looked radiant in a pale pink maternity dress, her hands constantly resting on her 7-month bump. She embraced me, whispering "thank you" in my ear, with what seemed like genuine emotion. I hugged her back and whispered, "You're welcome. I've made this day very special." For the first hour, everything proceeded normally. We played ridiculous baby shower games. We ate dainty sandwiches and fruit tarts. We watched Vanessa open gift after gift, cooing over tiny outfits and practical baby items. Then came the moment I'd planned for, the moment everything would change. "Before we have cake," I announced, standing at the front of the room, champagne flute in hand, "I'd like to make a toast and share something special I've prepared." 30 pairs of eyes turned to me, expectant, unsuspecting. When Vanessa asked me to host her baby shower, I was overcome with emotion. Sympathetic nods all around. This past year has been challenging for me, as many of you know. Finding out I couldn't have children naturally was devastating. Vanessa's face paled slightly. She knew what I couldn't have, yet she'd taken what wasn't hers to take. "But today isn't about my journey," I continued. "It's about celebrating new life, new beginnings." I raised my glass. To Vanessa and her beautiful baby girl. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone drank. Everyone relaxed, thinking the moment of potential awkwardness had passed. Then I added, "And what better way to celebrate than with some entertainment? I've put together a little presentation." I clicked a remote, and the large TV on our living room wall came to life. A slideshow began. Pictures of Vanessa throughout her pregnancy. Pictures of our family together at holidays. Pictures that made everyone smile. Until the slideshow shifted. Suddenly, there were screenshots of text messages between Mark and Vanessa. Explicit, unmistakable, dated, showing a timeline of betrayal that spanned years. Gasps filled the room. Vanessa dropped her glass. It shattered on our hardwood floor, juice spreading like blood. "Claire, turn it off!" she screamed. But I didn't. Instead, I kept narrating calmly. "As you can see, my husband and my sister-in-law have been having an affair for quite some time. Long before any fertility issues arose in our marriage." Another slide. Hotel receipts, dates, and times. They were quite thorough in their deception. The room had gone from shocked silence to horrified murmuring. Vanessa's mother had her hand over her mouth. My mother-in-law was shaking her head in denial. But the most interesting part, I continued, clicking to the next slide, medical records highlighted and annotated, is that the baby Vanessa is carrying is not, in fact, my husband's child. This caused an even greater uproar. Vanessa stood up, shaking. "What are you talking about? Of course it's—" She stopped herself, realizing what she was about to admit. "It's what, Vanessa? Your husband's? My husband's? Let's be clear about parentage, shall we?" I clicked again, revealing a DNA test. Because according to this, it's neither. The DNA test was fabricated, of course. A prop in my carefully constructed theater. But Vanessa didn't know that. No one did. All they saw was scientific-looking documentation with names and percentages. "That's a lie!" Vanessa screamed. "That's impossible." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "You've been sleeping with at least 2 men. Are you certain there wasn't a third? Your yoga instructor, perhaps? The one you've been having private sessions with 3 times a week?" This was another calculated shot in the dark. But judging by the way all color drained from Vanessa's face, I'd hit another bullseye. There was a third man. I hadn't actually known until that very moment, but her reaction confirmed everything. The beautiful thing about liars is that they never know what's true and what isn't. They lose track of their own deceptions. Just then, the front door opened. Right on cue. Jason walked in, followed by Mark and a few other male family members. I texted them all an hour earlier, suggesting they surprise the ladies by joining for cake. What's going on? Jason asked, taking in the frozen tableau of horrified women and the damning evidence still displayed on the TV screen. I smiled at him. Perfect timing, Jason. We were just discussing your baby's parentage. Mark lunged for the remote in my hand. Claire, stop this. Right now. Why, Mark? Aren't you proud of your work? Your deception? Your plans to divorce me now that you've found out I can't give you children? I clicked again, revealing the emails with his lawyer. You were so thorough in documenting everything else. Jason was staring at the screen, at the messages between his wife and his brother. His face went from confusion to comprehension to rage in the span of seconds. You son of a... he growled, launching himself at Mark. What followed was chaos. The two brothers grappling with each other while women screamed and backed away. Vanessa crying hysterically, her mother trying to comfort her while simultaneously demanding answers. My mother-in-law collapsed into a chair, looking shell-shocked. And through it all, I stood calmly, watching the destruction I'd orchestrated. Eventually, someone called for the fighting to stop. The men were separated. Mark's lip was bleeding. Jason was being restrained by two cousins. There's more, I said into the tense silence. Mark and Vanessa weren't just betraying me and Jason. They were betraying all of you. Our families. Our friends. I clicked again, revealing more documents. Mark has been embezzling from the family business for years, setting up accounts in the Cayman Islands, planning his escape. This part was true. It was what Richard had helped me discover. Mark's father stood up, his face ashen. Is this true? He demanded of his son. Mark couldn't even look him in the eye. And Vanessa, I continued, has been systematically isolating Jason from his friends and family while spending his money on her extracurricular activities, including fertility treatments she told him weren't working. More truth, pieced together from conversations with Jason and bank statements he'd shown me during our lunch. You're all wondering why I would air this dirty laundry in such a public way, I said, looking around the room at the shocked faces. Why not handle it privately, with dignity? I walked over to the gift table and picked up a large, beautifully wrapped package. Because they took from me privately. They lied to me privately. They planned to discard me privately. I handed the package to Vanessa. And I believe that kind of betrayal deserves a public response. With trembling hands, she unwrapped it. Inside was a folder, thick with legal papers. Divorce filings, I explained to the room. For both me and Jason, already prepared. Already signed by him as of this morning, though he didn't know the full story until now. All that's needed is Mark's signature and yours, Vanessa. Jason nodded grimly from across the room. He'd known something was coming today. He'd known I had evidence of the affair. He just hadn't known the extent of the deception, or that I planned to reveal it so publicly. You'll find the terms are non-negotiable, I continued. Mark loses his share in the family business. I get the house. Jason gets full financial disclosure and a very favorable settlement. And you two, I looked between Mark and Vanessa. You get each other, though I wonder for how long, now that the excitement of sneaking around is gone. Mark stepped forward, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. You planned all of this, set us up. No, Mark. You did that all by yourself. I turned to address our audience. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us today. The cake is delicious, and I encourage you to take some home. This party is over. One by one, the guests filed out. Some stopped to hug me. Others couldn't look me in the eye. Mark's mother paused in front of me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Claire. I had no idea. I squeezed her hand. I know. Neither did I, for too long. When almost everyone had gone, leaving just the central players in this drama, Mark finally found his voice again. You didn't have to do it this way, he said, his voice low and angry. You've destroyed everything. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I once loved with my whole heart. No, Mark. You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew who was holding the match. It's been 18 months since the baby shower that changed everything. 18 months of rebuilding, of finding myself again in the rubble of what was once my life. People ask me if I regret what I did, the public nature of the exposure, the calculated destruction. I don't. Not for a second. There are consequences to betrayal, and Mark and Vanessa deserved every bit of what came their way. The baby was born a month after the shower. A little girl with dark hair and olive skin that matched neither Mark's family nor Jason's. Vanessa's yoga instructor disappeared around the same time, moving suddenly to the West Coast. Draw your own conclusions. Mark tried to contest the divorce, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The embezzlement especially. His father was devastated, not just by the betrayal of his daughter-in-law, but by his son's theft from the family business. In the end, Mark lost everything. His share of the company, his family's respect, and any claim to the fortune he'd been building. Vanessa fared no better. Abandoned by Mark when he realized the baby wasn't his, rejected by her family for her deception, she moved back to her hometown. Last I heard, she's living with her grandmother, working as a receptionist, raising her daughter alone. Jason and I remained friends through it all. There's something bonding about surviving that kind of betrayal together. He's dating again now, a kind woman who appreciates him for who he is, not what he can provide. As for me, I kept the house. redecorated it completely, exorcised every trace of Mark from the space. I also started my own consulting business, using contacts I'd made through years of supporting Mark's career. Turns out I have quite a talent for strategic planning. Who knew? And 6 months ago, I got a call from an adoption agency. A young mother who couldn't keep her baby. A little boy who needed a home. It wasn't the path to motherhood I had imagined, but standing in his nursery now, watching him sleep, I know it's exactly where I'm supposed to be. Mark reached out once, about a year after everything fell apart. Asked if we could talk. Said he missed me. Said he'd made a terrible mistake. I didn't respond. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds don't heal. And some people don't deserve a second chance to inflict them. My son stirs in his crib, his tiny fists reaching up as he wakes. I lift him, breathe in his sweet baby scent, and feel a peace I never thought I'd find again. The thing about betrayal is that it shows you who people really are. Not just the betrayers, but everyone around you. Those who stay. Those who stand by you. Those who show up with pizza and wine on the nights when the silence in your empty house is too much to bear. I learned who my real family is, and it wasn't the one I married into. Sometimes I think about that day. The perfectly arranged flowers, the carefully selected decorations, the shocked faces as years of deception were laid bare. I think about the sound of glass shattering on hardwood, the way Mark's face crumpled when he realized he'd lost everything, the moment when Vanessa understood that her carefully constructed house of lies was collapsing. I don't feel joy at those memories, but I do feel justice. A sense that the universe balanced its scales, however imperfectly. They say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is truth. Stark, undeniable, public. The kind that doesn't just hurt in the moment, but changes the story people tell about you forever. They took what wasn't theirs to take. They lied. They schemed. They betrayed. And in the end, they lost everything that mattered. While I, broken, betrayed, discarded, found my way back to wholeness on my own terms. That's the thing about being underestimated. People never see you coming until it's too late. And by then, the damage is already done.